I'm Matt York, publisher and CEO of Videomaker. Thanks for taking the time to watch this exciting training, Deconstructing Cinematography Volume 2. This series takes great scenes from movies like The Assassination of Jesse James, Children of Men, Road to Perdition, Blade Runner, The Aviator, and The Dark Knight and explores how great cinematography can enhance a compelling story. Understanding how composition, lighting, and different shooting techniques work together can help beginning producers take their skills to new levels.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Released in 2007, this film's stunning cinematography earned Roger Deakins an Academy Award nomination.
In this scene, the James gang lies in wait to rob a train.
The glorious Union is dripping with our blood. Hates the striped banner, it is all I could. Ooh, I'm a good old rebel. Now that's just what I am. And for the Yankee nation, right on schedule, Buck.
Snuff those lanterns! Look at those fools. They're gonna trip and shoot each other and females.
I bet you I can find them husbands if they do.
Wow, that scene was impressive. Dan, what'd you think?
Well, I thought the most impressive part about that really was the fact that they're shooting at night.
Yeah.
And as you know, when you shoot at night, it's pretty tough to find available light to make it look natural and also to light up the scene well enough that you don't get that high ISO or high gain that gives you that noise in the black areas of your scenes, you know? So they did a really good job of using things like the lanterns there of those guys to light up their faces.
Yeah.
And also the train when it came around the edge as well. But the lanterns were kind of a really cool thing.
The crazy thing, like, you don't even know how many lights were actually in that scene until
Right.
you start, like, analyzing it. There was a 5K on the front of the train to light up everything.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And then there was, like, little runner lights on the side of the train to light up all the smoke that comes off of it.
And that looked great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the lanterns actually had dimmed 300-watt bulbs.
There it is.
With foil on one side, so you
Right.
can still see the flicker of the flame.
Right, but bright enough light that you don't have to bring your camera's ISO up to some ridiculous level.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, you know, the other thing too is if you looked at the people that were being lit by these lanterns too, the cinematographer wasn't trying to fill in that shadow light with some other light that would make it look, you know, a little bit more, you know, what you would call like a three-point lighting. He actually just let that happen. He let those natural shadows stay. I don't know if you noticed, but it was very contrasty. One side of their face was like almost black.
Yeah.
The other side was really well lit. But that helped you, think of the nighttime. Because
Yeah.
at night, you do have that kind of a situation happening. I thought that
And
was
they're
pretty cool.
also evil, so that actually
Yeah,
helps with what
more
they're-
contrast on evil characters usually means they're evil, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. Now, speaking of that train that was coming by too, when it came around the edge, it was kind of an interesting selection of shots to use this light from the train through the trees. Did you notice that?
When he came around the bend with all the smoke,
Right.
it really lit up the scene. And as it was like going through the trees, I was wondering, I was like, okay, where are the guys? Is this the scene where I see the guys? No.
Yeah.
Cuts to the other side. No.
Right.
And then it shows the guys with their masks.
Wasn't that creepy?
Oh man.
Yeah.
They were just standing there, just letting it go by, because they knew what they were doing.
Right.
And they were just standing there, all ominous.
Yeah. And that also reminded me of the main character himself, who was just kind of standing there on the tracks.
Yeah.
And the coolest part was, as the train got really close, most of us would have started running for our lives at that point, just to make sure he didn't mess up. But he just stood there like he knew exactly what was going down. He's done this a million times before, and he was going to rob this train.
The smoke just enveloped
him, and then that felt like a really good way to end that scene and kind of go into the next scene there, because it kind of almost went to white, really, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. But with a natural steam to white kind of transition. So I thought that was really cool too. And I don't know if you noticed this as well, but I'm sure you did. The amount of sparks coming out of that train
Yeah.
when it was stopping was something that you probably wouldn't naturally see, right? But yet it seemed natural to us because I don't know if you're a train operator, I'm not. But to me, like that looked kind of realistic because there's going to be some kind of sparks. But it was a little bit, there was quite a bit of sparks coming out of there. But that helped though because there was a scene there, if you remember, where they just kind of went along and you saw the guys on the side with their creepy masks, but you saw the sparks kind of coming in front of the scene as well.
The thing before that was really interesting was the camera was on the tracks and the train hit it.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, you're thinking as an audience, wait, oh my gosh, oh my, and then it just goes with the train.
Right, so now, why did they do that, do you think? And how did they do that, actually?
They put a piece of foam and they put the camera on top like the little dolly on the track to take out some of the rumble that the train was creating.
Okay, but I saw a little shake still.
Yeah,
right, but
to leave it there because it was on a track and everyone there would feel some rumble.
right.
And then they put a reflector right under the camera to reflect some of the light back onto the train.
True, yeah.
Because if it was just the light, it would completely wash out. It would just be black underneath it.
Right,
So,
right.
and since it was coming like straight at our faces, it needed some of that light to figure out what we were looking at.
Otherwise, you would have seen black basically on the train the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we'd love to talk more about the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, but just saying the entire title already has me out of breath here, so hold on. Okay. In our next segment, we'll check out a riveting scene from Children of Men.
Director Alfonso Cuarón and cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki pushed the boundary of single-take shooting to give this film a realistic documentary feel.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from Alfonso Cuarón's film, Children of Men. Released in 2006, this film's raw documentary style earned cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki an Academy Award nomination.
In this scene, the film's main characters are taken by surprise while driving.
Look out!
Jesus!
Go, go. We're gonna make it. Come on, we're gonna
I'm
make
not
it.
gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. Jesus! Right!
Save us! Save us! Christ, Jesus! Cover Kate!
she? Where is she? She's bleeding. She's bleeding. She's bleeding everywhere. Julian.
Put pressure on the wound.
Julian. Oh no. Oh no. Julian. Jesus Christ! Julian! It's the cops. It's the cops.
Jesus. Keep going. Straight up.
Are they coming back?
Faster, faster.
What's happening? Are they coming
I
back?
don't know. Just go faster.
Huh?
Oh, God, can't you pull off the road?
All right, slow down. I can't outrun them. I can't outrun them. I gotta stop. I gotta stop. Pull over the stop. Get your passports out. Get your passports out. Hey, we're British citizens. We're British citizens.
Hands on the steering wheel. Hands on the steering wheel. Calm down. Tell me what's happened.
We were
Calm down.
attacked there.
Okay, just wait. I'm going to call for assistance. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Get in the car.
Why did you do that?
Get in the car.
We have to get back in now. Quickly, we've got to get off the road.
Well, that was an incredible piece of cinematography. So, Andy, what did you notice in that?
I love that the whole thing was one take.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, there was no cuts in there that we could visibly see.
Right, right.
It was amazing. And they did that because they were going for more of a documentary style
Sure.
to get like real reactions and reactions, and basically how they would feel inside of that whole thing.
Right.
Just to put us in there with them.
Yeah.
It felt really cool.
Well, it did, and there must have been a lot of coordination that had to
Yes.
happen in order to make that, you know, a reality, because that was a lot of action happening. I mean, there was one point where the lady gets shot.
Yeah.
You know, there was another point where they get out of the car.
Uh-huh.
They have to reverse. They have to get that flaming car that came down to block their path. There's
the
all sorts of
motorcycle
things.
coming out on the side.
Yeah, if any one of those things didn't work out, you know, then they would have probably had to do the whole take all over again, or something close to it. I mean, maybe they could have started in the middle there or something like that. But it was meant to look like one take, like you said. So that was pretty amazing. I also noticed that they did some stuff with the editing, like they desaturated the colors a little bit to make it look a little grittier. And if you've watched the rest of the movie, you can tell there's a lot of blue shades and, you know, really desaturated colors. But
Kind
that
of
was
the
obviously for a
sad
reason.
post-apocalyptic world we're living in now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy that it's set in the future, but there's really no like future bells and whistles except for that one little impact triangle.
Yeah.
When he almost hits that burnt car.
Right.
It's like impact.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only futuristic thing.
So that, you know, in order to do those scenes, they must have had some sort of crazy equipment.
Yeah, Dan, I would just say it was ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. I checked out behind the scenes, and they have 2 sliders on a robotic head, so they can see anywhere and focus on anybody that's giving dialogue or in the main action of the scene.
Right, and I also noticed that they had some sort of, like, you know, place on the very top of the car that could house 4 different people.
Yes.
They had the focus puller in there, they had the cinematographer, the guy who's like operating the rig itself on some sort of joystick, and the director.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So they could all kind of watch that as it was happening.
And when the camera would go over like the passenger per se, like they would drop their seat back and lay flat as the camera was over them, and then when they moved, the crazy thing in my mind is that they have to like pop back up and continue acting.
So additional
like nothing
coordination.
happened.
Yeah. So even more coordination had to
Yes.
happen there actually to make that happen. Because if you don't even think about it while the camera's going. Like you see the camera run all the way to the front of the car and you're like, oh yeah, that's natural, that can happen. But it really can't. You know, you have to go over people's heads. It's a very tight spot in the car.
Yeah.
And so those people are gonna have to lower their seats for a moment and pop back up as the camera goes past it, you know?
Yeah, and to get that 5 shot, they pulled all the way back, and there was a hinge on the windshield that opened up, so it can come out even further and get that
Seriously.
really nice 5 shot.
Yeah, it's like, come on now. If only we could all have a windshield that just hinged up like that and we could all get nice shots.
Exactly. So now that we know that there's this big camera rig on top, and what it takes, there's 4 people up there, and there's like this little go-kart thing moving the whole car.
Right.
It begs the question, when they get out of the car, where's the cut? Because you don't see that when they get out of the car and the camera goes back to the car.
Right.
It's a normal car.
Yeah, so there's got to be a cut in there somewhere, because otherwise there would be that rig that you would see and it would totally
So that's
break
one
you out of
cut.
there. Yeah. Well, the other thing too I noticed was that did you see after the lady got shot when the blood hit the actual lens of the camera? There was actually a few little blood splatters on there, and then suddenly as they pan over, which happened almost immediately, to the left, the blood splatters are gone. So there's obviously a cut there too,
Yeah,
and
so
it's
there's two
sort of a
cuts.
continuity error, but we can forgive them for that because you wouldn't want blood splatter on the lens the entire time while you're watching the rest of the scene, which was like 2 or 3 minutes long.
Yeah, and with those two cuts, we didn't even know that they happened.
Right.
So this scene was pretty incredible. We'd love to talk more about Children of Men, but Dan and I are off to invent a brand new camera rig for our 30-minute single-take shot, right? You excited?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Of course.
In our next segment, we'll check out an intense scene from Road to Perdition.
Director Sam Mendes and cinematographer Conrad Hall teamed up to create stunning imagery to take a story about fathers and sons to new depths.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from Road to Perdition, directed by Sam Mendes. Released in 2002, cinematographer Conrad Hall created hauntingly beautiful scenes that earned him the Academy Award.
In this climactic scene, John Rooney, played by Paul Newman, gets an unexpected visit from Michael Sullivan, played by Tom Hanks.
I'm glad it's you.
Well, honestly, that's one of my favorite movies, and the reason is due to large part because of the cinematography. So, I mean, kudos goes out to Conrad Hall.
Absolutely. I mean, with movies like American Beauty, Cool Hand Luke, and Butch Cassidy on his belt, and 3 Academy Awards, he was rocking it.
It's apparent when you look at the actual film, too, that he really had honed the craft down to something that was an art form.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at the way he lit most of that stuff, it was really well done.
Yeah, and shooting in the dark is not an easy task.
No, we all know that. I mean, like shooting out in the dark requires either additional lights or to try and use the light that's available, which is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So he did a really good job of making that look great and matching it with the theme of the 1930s, which they were going for because that's when it was set.
Yeah, very monochromatic and
Right.
very bleak.
It had a lot of grit to it.
Yeah.
It was kind of a little bit depressing, but that was, due to the monochrome feel of it. But that was great, though, because it was the Great Depression, right?
Yeah, and he really made the shadows dark for that pivotal scene that we just saw.
Right.
Because Tom Hanks started in the shadows and then started shooting there, and he didn't know who it was.
Yeah. That was pretty cool, though, because, I mean, the fact that you didn't know who it was at first, but you had an idea of who it was.
Yeah, it might have been.
Was I think, the point. And that was a really great way to just sort of feel the way that John Rooney in that scene was feeling, where he kind of basically knew who it was. You could tell just by the shots they took of him and his face. He was like kind of resigned to the fact, okay, this is probably Tom Hanks, And
he didn't move from that door. He was like, I know who it is. They just have to get to me now.
Yeah, and the cool part too is during that point in time when you see him have that realization, they do that nice little slow dolly in.
Yeah.
I love that. If you have the right actors, that can be a really amazing shot.
Pull that off.
Yeah.
One of the other camera moves that I really like was when Tom Hanks started shooting them. It started with one guy, and then as the camera went around,
Oh, that was
the
awesome.
guys just like dropped. It was like, now the
Right.
camera's on you, and you drop, and the
Right.
next guy drops, all the way till you get to the front of John Rooney's character.
Right, probably the most epic dolly shot ever done
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like moving shots too, I don't know if you noticed at the very beginning when that scene first started, they had that awesome little crane up shot
Yeah.
where it went over the top of that little overhang. I'm telling you, if you have overhangs like that to come up from behind on a crane shot, just do it every time because it looks so epically awesome.
It does, with all like little water splashing on it. Really
Yeah.
gave you a feel to it.
Yeah, and speaking of the water splashes too, I mean, this is more of a technical item, but they must have had the world's like longest rain system
Yeah.
in the world. 'Cause I mean, like the whole street had rain coming down on it, and that awning and everything. It was just ridiculous. They must have paid a lot of good money for that, of course.
Yeah, and the rain like falling from like the hats when it was a close-up. It
Yeah.
was really cool, like just bouncing off.
Yeah, they did a good job with that. Plus, the fact that they had so many close-ups in that
Yes.
scene at the end there was a really good idea because that's when you really want to see the emotion on somebody's face. Is when they're at this point where the one guy's about to assassinate somebody he knows really well.
Yeah, and Hitchcock did say, shoot your love scenes like murders and your murders like love scenes. And they
that-
totally did in this one.
It kind of seemed like that,
Yeah,
didn't it, at times?
slow and steady, nice and tight.
Right. Another interesting part about this too was during the whole scene, you probably noticed this, but you didn't actually hear any gunshots happen. So besides
true.
the fact that you saw people getting hit by bullets, you might not have known that there was somebody else actually shooting.
Yeah.
But it really worked well because that music was so powerful. That music done by Thomas Newman, he's a great composer anyway. Very powerful music. But because it was just the music there and not the actual bullet sounds, it made it seem more like a dreamy sequence. And that's what the director was going for. Sam Mendes wanted to sound more like a dreamy sequence. And so at the end of it, it never felt like it was a real thing, even though it was.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that knocked the sound out was when Tom Hanks finally shot John Rooney.
And suddenly you heard the sound of the bullets at that point again.
And then it was quiet.
So it just made it very artistic, and I think they did that perfect. I know that, they talked about at one point that when they first tried to put the scene together in editing, they actually had the bullet sounds originally, and they realized it just didn't work. It was too realistic. And so by taking that out, just taking the bullet sounds out and keeping the music up nice and high, it made the whole scene work.
Yeah, it really worked. And the best thing is that when Tom Hanks shot Paul Newman, you didn't see the muzzle,
Right.
and it was nice and tight on his face, and so you can see the emotion that he was like
That struggle.
conflicting with,
Yeah.
when as he tried to pull the trigger and shoot him, which he did.
Yeah.
And just like the turn of character was really crazy.
And then at the end there, of course, not even seeing, the character on the ground dead was probably really helpful because, you don't really want to see the guy dead after they've been friends forever and see all these bullet holes in his body, which he shot the guy like 20 times.
Yes.
Kind of ridiculous. I didn't know it took that many shots to kill a guy, but,
Now you know.
Tom Hanks just wants to make sure, I guess.
Yeah.
But, the other interesting thing, too, was at the very end there, you saw all these neighbors and people in these apartment buildings looking out their windows and looking really kind of creepily out their windows because they're all very still. And obviously, no one's going for the phone. No one's trying to call for help. They're all just
Yeah.
like, "Yep, this happens
No
in our
one's
neighborhood." And
tweeting about it, Facebooking about it.
it's the 1930s, and this sort of thing flies, I guess,
Yeah.
you know. But it was a really good thing that they showed that at the end, because it just made it seem more realistic again, because there would be some people witnessing that. But also, it's interesting that nobody in that town has the power to call somebody to stop that, because it's just like that's part of the movie, right? That this whole town's kind of like run by, you know, the character of the guy who just died. Well, we'd love to talk more about Road to Perdition, but I think I see some nefarious figures emerging from the shadows around here, so Andy and I better get out of here.
Yeah.
So in our next segment, we'll check out a scene from the sci-fi cult classic, Blade Runner.
This Ridley Scott film was one of the last films to use classic Hollywood in-camera techniques to create a believable, futuristic world without the aid of computers.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from Ridley Scott's cult classic, Blade Runner. Originally released in 1982, cinematographer Jordan Cronenweth created a dark, futuristic world that modernized the film noir style.
We're going to take a look at two different versions of the scene where Harrison Ford chases down a replicant in the heart of the city. Let's start by checking out the original 1982 version of the scene.
Get out of the way!
Well, that was a pretty unique piece of cinematography, Andy.
Yes.
So what did you take from that scene?
Well, the scene was really good in the way that it really gave the noir feel with all of the dirt and the grime and the
Right.
congestion of people and the
Yeah.
cars and the things and the places. And
Right. Made even more kind of like disorienting by the
Yeah.
fact that everyone was holding these neon umbrellas for
Yeah.
whatever reason. I guess if in the future you want to start investing in neon umbrellas, you might make a lot of money at it. But
Take my money now.
yeah, exactly. But you also probably noticed that they used a lot of other neon lights throughout the scene too. In fact,
Yeah.
a crazy amount of neon lights. There was like a guitar-looking neon light, a whole bunch of circles, all different colors too. And that was kind of what basically lit the scene too, which was also pretty crazy because most filmmakers don't use neon lights to light a scene because of the various problems you get with, you know, the frequency and stuff of the neon lights.
which was shown in the high speed section
Right.
where they slowed it down.
As she was breaking through the glass there.
Yeah, where she was shot and she like fell down. The neon lights were flickering, like really giving it a different type of feel.
Right.
and it was high speed, so they threw some snow and bubbles in there to really
That helped it a lot.
accentuate.
Yeah, if you
like,
didn't-
this is slow now.
Right, exactly. If you didn't see that and you didn't see the glass coming down real slow, it wouldn't
Yeah.
have made the slow-mo all that cool. But I think they, in the long run, decided that that flicker looked kind of nice because it's supposed to be the future, and I guess in the future lights flicker like that, and that's okay. But in most instances, you wouldn't do that, right? With like fluorescent lights and neon lights, you usually don't use those because when you go slow-mo, you see that flicker.
Yeah.
But they decided to go with it because it was like a stylistic effect that they liked.
Very futuristic.
But the other thing was, as you mentioned before with the plate glass, I don't know if you noticed this, but the plate glass kind of sometimes looked a little fake as she was going through it.
Yes.
Because when the glass kind of smashed up, you realize it was like, I don't know, like a 2 millimeters thin or something like
Yeah,
that.
and you could just break through it like this.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody be able to break through glass that easily with just their arm like that. Maybe it's because she's a replicant, I don't know, but you know.
Super strong.
It still looked like pretty thin glass, especially when it hit the ground and it broke into like a million different pieces.
Yeah.
I don't think glass really does that typically.
No.
And it also had this yellow look to it when it hit the ground, which I'm assuming is because of the sugar glass that they use, but we'll leave that to the philosophers.
Yeah. And the other thing that I noticed that you can really, really tell when it's the stunt double.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer flowing hair with like a mat on top. It's the helmet
Yeah.
of hair.
Right.
It just doesn't move.
Right.
It's like ready for anything.
When she gets up, there's really no bob to the hair at all.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, it's like this stiff hair. Maybe she had too much hairspray on that day or something, but it doesn't move at all. But then you see her running in the next scene and it's bobbing up and down like it would normally, and then she's tumbling and suddenly her hair's not bobbing again. So
it's like the helmet. I wonder if you look closely, you can see a chin strap too.
yeah, you might be able to actually. So there's some definite continuity errors in that.
Yeah.
If you also look closely too, when the plate glass actually fell to the ground, there was a part there, especially at the end, where you notice like this little metal strip that was kind of keeping the panes of glass together. And once you smashed through that piece of glass, the metal strip just chunked right off, which felt weird to begin with, you know. Maybe it was plastic, who knows, right? But then when it hit the ground and it shattered in a million pieces, you
Yeah.
could totally tell it was just like this ribbon material. And I don't think
hilarious.
ribbon's going to hold up glass. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit fakey. Well, it's not all that often that a director gets a chance to go back 25 years later and fix their mistakes. But Ridley Scott did just that for Blade Runner, The Final Cut.
Let's take a look at the final version of the same scene that was released in 2007. Clearly, we weren't the only ones to see all those continuity errors.
Thank goodness, right? I mean,
Yes.
the cool part was they actually brought the lady back. I don't know if you noticed that because that's what they replaced was the part with the helmet hair.
Yeah, when she
you know?
fell down.
Yeah, so you actually saw the lady in that one, and they got her into the same outfit, which is really the most miraculous thing of all
Yes,
that. After
25 years
25
later.
years, she fit into the same outfit. And then they refilmed those scenes, and they look pretty seamless, actually, I thought.
Yeah, they looked really good.
Yeah, and I thought that, you know, overall, I wasn't sure how they actually got her back into those scenes so seamlessly, but it looked really good.
Yeah, and it's very crazy to think that back then when they first shot it, everything was in camera.
Right,
And so
yeah.
these 25 years really brought the level of CG where they wanted it to kind of make it better.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk more about Blade Runner, but Dan and I are due to reshoot a scene from the movie we made when we were 5 years old.
Wait, you mean Stories of a Teddy Bear?
The Final Cut! Yes! In our next segment, we'll check out a scene from Martin Scorsese's intense portrait of Howard Hughes, The Aviator.
This film used original newsreel footage and color in artistic ways to give it a true throwback look and earned cinematographer Robert Richardson the Academy Award.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Video Maker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down to find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from Martin Scorsese's biographical drama about Howard Hughes, The Aviator. Released in 2004, cinematographer Robert Richardson won the Academy Award for his work.
We're going to take a look at the Hell's Angel movie premiere scene, which mixes creative techniques and original newsreel footage to bring it to life.
A million good souls lining the curb of Hollywood Boulevard. Look at the automobiles, ladies and gentlemen. There are at least 45,000 cars here, making it the greatest traffic jam ever seen in the
quite
world.
a lump in his throat tonight. 6 months after the stock market crashes and after the death of 3 of his pilots, he's finally unveiling his $4 million baby
It's the
doll.
most expensive movie ever made. Nothing five and dime for our Mr. Hughes. Nothing like tonight has ever been seen before, and I can certainly say it will never be seen again. 500,000 people are crowding the streets to get a glimpse of the stars and celebrities. 3 companies of Marines were called to assist the 250 special police who are handling this enormous
This is
crowd.
an industry town, my friend, and nobody but nobody makes a movie outside a studio. Sure, some Hollywood insiders over at the Brown Derby may be
And
laughing.
now, ladies and gentlemen, I think... Yes, I can just see Mr. Hughes' car arriving now. Mr. Hughes escorts the lovely starlet Jean Harlow tonight. He discovered her for this picture, and we think her platinum blonde locks and hot jazz baby doll style are going to make her a big star. Mr. Hughes, how about a word?
Man, that was a good scene. What'd you think?
Well, I thought that the most interesting part of that was the color, really. Because I noticed that throughout the whole scene, the color was kind of a bit muted in like the greens, for instance, and you saw a lot more of the blues and the reds come through. But really, that mimics very well the kind of film style they had in the late 20s there when that film came out. And so I thought it was a good technique to try and reintroduce that two-strip process back into the whole film, just mimic that basically in their new footage that they shot, in order to make it seem like it was, again, shot in the 20s.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the 20s, they actually used real news footage from the 20s, like
Right.
as he was going down the street, you saw like all of those old cars.
Yeah.
We don't have that many. That's
I was going to say, that's a lot of old cars. They must have spent a lot of money on that.
And like all of those old people on the side of it dressed up.
That's
and
pretty awesome.
They just colorized the whole thing
Because it was
from
in black and white, right? Yep.
And they made it look like what the film looked like.
And it really kind of came in very seamlessly, too. I mean, I didn't really notice. You could tell it was a little different, but you didn't notice it so much. It sort of felt like you were seeing it from the view of the public suddenly, and then you went back in and you saw Howard Hughes inside of his, limousine, and then you went back out and again saw more of that footage. It felt pretty natural to me.
Yeah.
So they blended that in really well. Now, the actual red carpet scene, I thought that was really cool because I'm sort of a lighting guy myself, and so I really liked the way that they chose to use the photographer's flash bulbs in that scene. So basically, every time one of those flash bulbs went off, it wasn't just a little bit brighter. It was just like amazingly brighter, like 11 stops brighter, basically.
washed him
yeah,
out.
like washed him out. And the only thing you saw was his pupil. I don't know if you
Yeah.
noticed that, but it's pretty cool. So it really gave this feeling of disorientation and like he was being just like engulfed and completely just like it was almost too much for him with all this press out there.
Yeah, like berated with like people and questions and the shots on the side of all the people like yelling and the eyes. And
Right.
just everybody's trying to get his attention and he's just trying to focus on walking
Yeah.
through all of the flash bulbs
Right.
and get in.
And that was the cool thing too, to see all those flash bulbs on the ground and see how they were wasting a lot of flash bulbs back then. I didn't realize they did that, but it also was representative again of the way Howard Hughes is feeling. You could see that he wasn't feeling too good about the whole thing. He was a little off, and it was kind of overwhelming for him. But in crushing those bulbs in the ground with his feet, you sort of felt like he was also being crushed. It was like a representation that he was also being crushed by this, incredible amount of press that was trying to get at him, basically.
Yeah, really good use of close-up shots to show the emotions on his face that's going on and all the people around him.
Exactly. And then they also, in that same regard, used a bunch of crane shots. I don't know if you saw that too. I liked those crane shots. I thought they worked pretty well, where they started off real high, so you could see the crowd real nice, and then they came down to Howard Hughes' level. And I kind of like that a lot because it sort of like, again, gives you the wider aspect, but in doing so, it still has some nice motion and comes down to the level of what Howard Hughes is seeing. So I thought that was a pretty cool technique. And, whenever you can use a crane like that, I say, go for it.
Yeah, and that last scene, they actually used a ton of different elements just to get that movie premiere scene done.
Right, that big wide shot with the planes. Yeah.
The same 300 people that were on the right side in the stages.
Right.
They just moved them over to in front of the theater, and then they just took the cars and did it in 3 separate takes, one in the back, one in the middle, and one in the front.
They obviously didn't have enough extras to do the whole thing all at once, so they just decided to do 3 different stages of extras, right? Combine them together, and then it ended up looking like they were all there at one time.
Yeah, and then they threw CG planes to fly over.
Totally, and they added a bit of a tilt there too. I don't think they had that originally, but of course the set too, if you remember, was an actual miniature.
Yeah.
Right, so that's cool that they were able to combine both a miniature, a whole bunch of people sitting in grandstands in 3 different stages, and these CG planes all in the one shot and made it look seamless.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what good compositing comes down to.
Yeah, and money, and time.
And money and time. Well, we'd love to talk more about The Aviator, but Andy and I are due to shoot more footage for the masterpiece we've been working on for the last 25 years.
Stories from a Teddy Bear.
Totally, man.
Yes.
So in our next segment, we're going to check out an intense interrogation scene from The Dark Knight.
Director Christopher Nolan and cinematographer Wally Pfister used unconventional techniques to give this scene a raw, gritty feel.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Andy. Welcome to Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography, where we examine great movie scenes known for spectacular cinematography and then break them down and find out exactly why they're so highly revered.
Now we're going to take a look at a scene from the second installment of Christopher Nolan's Batman series, The Dark Knight. Released in 2008, this gritty take on the Caped Crusader earned Wally Pfister an Academy Award nomination for cinematography.
We're going to take a look at an intense interrogation scene between Batman and the Joker.
If we're gonna play games, I'm gonna need a cup of coffee.
The good cop, bad cop routine?
Not exactly.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck. See?
You wanted me. Here I am.
I wanted to see what you'd do. And you didn't disappoint. You let 5 people die. Then you let Dent take your place. Even to a guy like me, that's cold.
Where's Dent?
Those mob fools want you gone so they can get back to the way things were. But I know the truth. There's no going back. You've changed things. Forever.
And why do you want to kill me?
I don't want to kill you. What would I do without you? Go back to ripping off mob dealers? No. No, you complete me.
You're garbage. You kills for money.
Don't talk like one of them. You're not. Even if you'd like to be. To them, you're just a freak. Like me. They need you right now. But when they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. You see, their morals, their code. It's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.
Where's Dent?
You have all these rules, and you think they'll save you.
Who's in control? I have one rule.
Oh, then that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth.
Which is?
The only sensible way to live in this world is without rules. And tonight, you're gonna break your one rule.
Well, it's pretty hard not to just watch Heath Ledger's acting in this film. He did a great job, but we got to talk about cinematography. So what did you notice in this scene that was pretty cool?
I noticed that the usually interrogations are lit with one light, like they did in the beginning.
Right.
They have the one light on the desk, which is giving most of the light to the two characters.
Sure. Although it's usually overhead, though, right?
Yeah, like on the guy, like, where were you Tuesday?
Right, right.
And then they had another light by the door, which was like giving kind of a scene breakdown where everything was.
Sure.
And then everything went on.
Yeah.
Like all the lights overhead, and
Right.
Batman comes in and slams his head down to the ground.
And they did a good job of
Table.
making sure it didn't look overexposed, really. I mean, it looked overexposed maybe for a split second, but then it kind of dropped down and looked pretty good from there on out again. But that may be because they did have a pretty low exposure to begin with, but somehow with the camera they used, they were able to get away with all that.
Yes.
At the same time, after the interrogation started, you probably noticed that when Batman and Joker were talking to each other, Batman was pretty, basically pretty stoic, never really moved that much. But the Joker was kind of moving back and forth quite a bit, and sometimes even, you may have noticed this as well, he went out of focus a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really tough to rack
bit.
focus that back and forth. And the filmmakers actually like that because the Joker is supposed to, give out this sense of kind of craziness. You don't know what he's up to. He's, he's very random. And so having that, him going in and out of the shot a little bit and the rack focus kind of worked out pretty well in this case.
Yeah, I mean, even when the lights were on, you could see some of his makeup coming off, like almost like he's falling apart.
Right, right. It looked very grungy. I thought it looked pretty cool. So you probably also noticed that in that same scene, the Batman and the Joker, while they were talking to one another, there was like this dolly happening behind their shoulders, but it was very short movements. It's very tough to make short movements like that look smooth. But they did a good job of that, and it sort of made the Batman sort of feel in control a little bit more. So I thought that was a cool technique that they used.
Yeah, and right after that, they went all handheld when he grabbed him across the table because he snapped.
Yeah.
Like his fuse was just gone.
Right.
And so the dramatic flair was to grab the cameras and go all handheld to really add something to that scene.
Right, and the cool part about that was that they could do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, the fact was they didn't have any light stands in the scene to, get in their way. They had all the lighting coming from above once they flicked the lights on, and so that way they had all this, room to move in the scene, which allowed them to do that quick little dolly forward with a handheld that worked very well.
Yeah, and with the lights on, this is actually the first time in any of the Batman movies that we see the suit in full light.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in the first movie, they said that the suit was so bad that they couldn't show it.
Oh, really?
So it was
That's
like all
awesome.
in the shadows and the cave and stuff.
Right.
But this is the first scene in this movie that it's in full light because they did such a good job on it.
Well, it also attests to, good lighting in the first movie, I'd say, if they were able to somehow hide the fact that the suit wasn't all that great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's kind of something to note is that they just lit him very well, put him in shadows and stuff like that, so you didn't see that suit. But that also attests to how good Wally Pfister is, the guy who shot this whole thing. I mean, he also shot Inception, which he did win an Academy Award for. He shot this movie, of course, which he got a nomination for, didn't win. But he shot all the other Batmans, and honestly, like, his cinematography style definitely deserves those kind of awards.
We'd love to talk more about The Dark Knight, but I'm fairly certain there's a superhero hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, he's probably about ready to slam our heads right into this projector.
Yes. We hope you've enjoyed watching Videomaker's Deconstructing Cinematography. See you next time.
We hope this series offered some insight on how great cinematographers craft their scenes to enhance the story. Using these techniques in your next project can help take an ordinary scene and make it extraordinary. I'm Matt York. Until next time, keep making video.